This is episode 12, Batten Down the Patches. My name is Flake. I will be your host. I am joined by my co host, Mark Theus.
Flake always with the nice puns at the beginning. We're happy to bring you another episode of the Boneyard, and we want to start the show by thanking our sponsors, Team Rankstar, Inked Gaming, 98.3 Media, OP Seat, and all you wonderful listeners. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Yeah, MYTHGARD has undergone its most extensive adjustment last Friday. A more polished UI, some changes to Arena, as well as a laundry list of tweaks and alterations to the card pool, has pretty much made this latest patch one hell of a game changer.
So many changes again to Flake, and we are bringing in the help of Wholesome to cut through the jungle of nerfs and buffs. A MYTHGARD partner himself, Wholesome produces some excellent content and is no stranger to balance changes.
That's right. So let's just get to it, ladies and gentlemen. Lots to get to. Let's play the music. Enter the Boneyard. All right, so we're going to kick it off with, again, a little bit of an update, a little quick catch up for all of you in terms of news. Now, obviously, the most newsworthy thing that's occurred was that the latest patch dropped on Friday, November 22nd. They were kind of hinting to the fact that it might be delayed, but at the last second kind of slipped under the door on us on Friday, November 22nd. So there was changes to Arena. The user interface got a little bit of a polish. And of course, 67 total card changes have been made, which creates a very significant change to the MYTHGARD atmosphere. On the competitive news front, there's also the Winter Wonder Brawl, which is around the corner on December 14th and 15th, if I'm not mistaken. Mark.
Correct.
I think that's correct.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and another free-to-enter tournament, cash and prizes, as well as all kinds of glory are on the line. So make sure you're signed up for that. For if you want to keep in the know, just go ahead and follow at 983TV on Twitter. You get all your news and updates over there. But like we mentioned, Mark, the biggest piece of news is something that everyone's already knee deep into, which is the patch that came along, which cleaned up the UI a little bit. Again, a little revamp to the arena system with a couple added features. You know, some bug fixes here and there, of course. But the most important thing that everybody wanted to see and know about was the card changes. Lots and lots of card changes.
Oh, yes. Almost all of them. I think it was over 50% of the cards took some sort of change.
Well, I'm not sure exactly how many. I mean, I have a sort of a side-by-side comparison. I said 67 is purely what I have in front of me. I could be wrong. I think it was just about 67 cards.
Okay, yeah. Maybe it's not 50%. I don't know. We'll have to ask Corey about that.
Yeah, in order to sort of break this down, we're going to get to every single card change that I have here in front of me, at least some of the more notable ones, and as well as everything else. We're enlisting the help of one Wholesome Gaming to get through this in the most wholesome of ways. Wholesome, welcome to the show.
Howdy, y'all. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Now, Wholesome Gaming, you're kind of in a world of salt and despair. How did that name come about? I gotta ask.
Well, I guess it began when I started playing Dota, and I kind of lost some friendships because of that game. So
Haven't we all?
yeah, 6,000 hours into that game, and I was like, all right, we got to change something here. Losing real life friends and creating discourse because of that is just not worth it. And so I felt like I needed to hold myself to a standard.
Well, I guess so. I mean, if you just name yourself, I've considered naming myself the best card player in the world, but it would never reflect properly in the actual practice. So I just stick to Flake. That's kind of just been my thing. Now, you know, you're in MYTHGARD and you're very well, you know, entwined in what MYTHGARD does and the gameplay, the culture, as well as the content creation aspect of it. But was MYTHGARD maybe your most recent CCG, but how deep does your CCG background go?
I would say it started with competitively Gwent. And from there, I went on to Artifact and then to MTGA. And I played in tournaments in all those games. And I kind of settled on MYTHGARD, honestly. It's got the best of all those games combined.
So it's but you're more of, I guess, a recent player, saying you have a lot of hours of Dota and that and those types of games, I would imagine. But was you say Gwent was your first real foray into a competitive outlook of CCGs? But were you ever dabbling in card games prior to that?
I mean, Pokemon as a kid, but
There we
I
go.
wouldn't really compare that.
Yeah, well, Pokemon.
Yeah,
I mean, there is a competitive, I guess,
yeah,
culture around Pokemon, but I would lie if I say I know anything about it. I know the rules of how to play Pokemon. I think my most recent adventure into that game was, I think they released like a browser based, not browser based, mobile version of Pokemon that you can play and collect. And I think I played maybe about an hour or two of that before I got my butt kicked by anybody with like, what the hell are these like EX Pokemon that are just like enormous with like 300 HP? I don't get it, man. Like it's a whole different world. But you're saying that you sort of settled on Mythgard because of the fact that it takes a lot from different card games. And what if you could just elaborate on that, because everybody has their own appreciation of the game or maybe even disdain for some of the elements of Mythgard. But you're saying that it sort of took from, you said, Gwent and Artifact and Magic. So what are these elements that you're seeing from other card games that you have now, that you can identify in Mythgard?
well, starting with Gwent, I think the consistency because of the whole burning situation and 40 card deck, you're able to kind of have more consistent games than you normally would, let's say with Magic. And as far as the mana system in Magic goes, I love that. Gwen doesn't have that. And the lane system from Artifact, it adds so much complexity and depth to the game.
That's one thing I certainly am a fan of, is the fact that, much like a chessboard or any other type of strategic, the placement matters. Whether you're flanking or just running up the gut, guns blazing. It's important to properly place your minions in it, and it's an element to the game that I'm glad makes sense. That not everyone can block and not everyone can always attack the proper way. So I can see what you're talking about there, though. I mean,
Yeah.
and in terms of consistency, what's interesting about this game is that Gwent has a 25 card deck for the most part. Hearthstone is 30 cards. And then after that is, Mythgard with a minimum 40, and then Magic with a minimum 60. So in reality, it has, of those four card games we mentioned, it has the second most cards in a deck, but the consistency still manages to go to be something that people are very on board with. So it's interesting that you should touch upon that. I mean, then again, there's Magic with the land system that
Ugh,
I don't think it'll ever get fixed, but
no.
uh, it's a whole other that's a whole other podcast. But we want to get into the actual changes that we saw in the most recent patch. I don't know what's the patch number, like patch. Got to find the actual patch notes, but um,
I don't know what the number was actually. I don't remember what the number
we'll
was.
find it. Yeah, we'll find it. But the most recent patch has landed, and we're very, very happy with it for the most part. There's a lot of people who are just all about it, and it has definitely reinvigorated a little bit of what the meta can be in terms of just. It like rolled a grenade into the meta and just blew things up a little bit. And people are just kind of waiting for the smoke to clear to see what kind of pieces they could put together with what has changed. Patch 0.17.2 is what we're calling it,
There it is.
apparently. So,
Wow, there's been 17 of them, huh?
well, there's been a whole bunch of stuff. This is the point 2 version, but we want to touch first on, I suppose, the non-gameplay element, which is the UI. And I want to know what both of your first thoughts is on the upgraded UI. I think this is like the maybe second or third pass in terms of UI changes that we've seen since like closed beta. So, what is your initial impression now, looking at what the user interface looks like?
Well, for me at least, it's a huge improvement. I love it so far. When I would show Mythgard to somebody new, that's their first comment is the UI needs to be changed. There's just too much going on, and I really like this kind of minimalist, clean look that they have going on right now.
Yeah, I
And
agree. Especially for mobile, because I think on mobile it was everything's smaller scale. It looked a little crowded. I think it looks a little bit cleaner. The buttons look a little larger, which is good for mobile. I think they made it more mobile friendly with the new UI. But new UI is always, in my opinion, the most exciting thing because I'm always excited when we're gonna get some visual changes. It just feels refreshing to have visual changes every once in a while.
yeah, certainly. And the fact that there's so many different modes already there, having a clean UI is something that's very important. And on the list of priorities for people, it's difficult when you're a developer. I would imagine when you have something that's still fresh and new, you want to be able to release a good product and kind of work on it and have people play it while you're still improving it. And I would imagine if you're Rhino, you're just getting this influx of feedback constantly, 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 be it cart changes, be it feedback to the actual, let's say, rule set or balances. But UI is something that they've always had to wrestle with in terms of having prioritizing it over
Mm.
other things, wherein it's not necessarily a bug. The UI isn't a bug issue, so it's definitely low priority from that regard. It's not a glaring imbalance to a specific card or archetype, so that sort of deprioritizes it. But at the same time, it's the first thing that you meet. It's the first impression that you get from a game, right? It's the first thing that you interact with even before basic economy or gameplay. So I feel like it's like getting a having a bad UI is like meeting someone and getting a really limp dead fish handshake from them. They might be a great person, but if that initial impression is off, it's going to take a lot for you to sort of cleanse the palate of that first interaction. And I think that they did a good job in this case. It looks a lot cleaner. And one of the issues I've always had with it was just kind of navigating from menu to menu and let's say you want to change the deck art or whatever for a list, but you're already queued up for a game. It's like 12 clicks in order to get there, kind of thing. And I think that they've done a decent job of kind of balancing the fact that there's a million different paths to navigate, but having it so that all the road signs are there and you're kind of go down those branches properly. Um, when you're looking at the UI, is there anything that you still feel needs to get cleaned up or dealt with?
Maybe the way the rankings are listed, I still find it difficult to find me, and when I'm looking at like ranking lists, it's I still find it difficult to find where I'm at. Like I gotta scroll through it a lot to find me. Like maybe a search, so I could just like a search button there, so I could just type my name in and find it. That's like really nitpicky, I guess, but um, that was always frustrating, and that didn't really change in the new UI.
Oh, gee. Well, yeah. So that like
But
that's a
that's
big one
nitpicky.
that no, I well, it's not necessarily nitpicky. I mean, whenever I want to find myself in the ladder, I just scroll to the bottom, and I usually find myself. But
Bronze all
it
the way to the bottom. There I am.
yeah. But in most cases, you're correct. I find like, especially in terms of looking at a ranked or a ladder, like a snapshot of that, you're still kind of it takes all that information and really packs it into a small window wherein you have this giant screen, you know what I mean? But you have a lot of
Yeah.
real estate on a page in order to look at like this. Why not use it? For instance, if you look at the faction missions, you have a whole page that, even though it's just very basic information, it takes up a lot of the screen and it's very well represented and it gives you a good snapshot of what that progression is. However, if you're looking to see who's on the ladder ahead of you, behind you, where you're at on it, it really only utilizes like a 10,
Ver-
20% of your screen space in order
Yeah.
to actually figure that out.
It
And I
stays in
feel
the
like
ranked
that's
window, right? It doesn't leave the ranked window. It just stays in that little left corner.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lost opportunity there, especially given the fact that I would imagine there's some type of competitive season coming around the corner, given the fact that it's this particular season of ranked is wrapping up very soon, which is something that we're probably going to get to in a future episode. The fact that it kind of snuck up on us, this like 3 month long round of this competitive season is already kind of wrapping up. So they're
Actually,
gonna have to.
it just got extended. I don't know if you saw that, but they moved
I
it to December
oh,
20th.
okay, still.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I
That's
did
still kind
actually
of
did not.
wrapping up.
But well, that's it. So we're less than a month away from
Yeah.
the fact that it's like we're 4 weeks away from that kind of getting all together. Wholesome, from your perspective, is there anything that's kind of just nipping at you and saying, what, like I wish that this. It's obviously not a priority, but it's I wish that this would get cleaned up or optimized.
Honestly, I need more time with the UI to really say, but you know, knowing that this game was built cross-platform from the get-go, I understand why some of the UI might look a little weird on PC, but on mobile, it's incredible, honestly. I've
Yeah.
since moving overseas, I've had to play on mobile quite a bit, and I'm just blown away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's really good on mobile.
yeah, and it's tough because there's a lot to sort of navigate. And one of the most annoying things to do on mobile is build a deck. I find it's always the pain in the ass to hit the search
Yeah.
bar and then the keyboard application sort of pops up and you have to do this and X out and accept. It is a very, very annoying thing to do. And with the vast collection that Mythgard has in their core set, pretty big slew of cards, it's something that I don't think you'll ever be able to circumvent when you're on like you're on your iPhone or you're on your whatever and trying to build a 40 card cohesive deck without squinting too hard to see everything. But um, I'll say this, that with the amount of features and little nooks and crannies that you can explore, be it puzzles or arena or 2v2 or the ladder or your collection or your deck or your art or your portrait, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many different avenues to go through, that having this kind of UI constantly being upgraded is it's a good thing. And I'm really glad that this is something that they didn't necessarily push aside too much. I mean, this entire patch was massive from a perspective of what they actually tackled, be it from the arena aspect, which I think is what we're going to talk about now, is the fact that arena also got a nice little injection of of appeal from a perspective of somebody who's going to go play it, or test it out or whatnot. I love arena. I love draft. We've talked about this with Caleb in a past episode from a limited perspective, but paths and powers, I feel, being able to. So the changes, I should probably prelude to this whole part of the conversation, is that paths and powers are now selectable before you start drafting cards. How does this change how you draft?
It was not only that, but you also get a choice of three. Like it shows you which three you're gonna get to pick at the very end. So that actually is like a double change, right? Because at you would only get to see three at the end, but now it shows you at the very beginning. So you could actually
What's
start
I'm
building.
saying? Yeah,
Yeah, you can start building your deck from the beginning of. All right, here's the three that were laid out to me. So let me kind of gear a deck towards this. It definitely changes
right.
the way you build it for sure.
It's absolutely incredible. I mean, like I'm all about the synergies and being able to, kind of, have a game plan in mind and then basically see what kind of cards you're getting. I just love that aspect, and I think it adds so much power to all the decks in arena and makes the games way more enjoyable.
Yeah, and one thing about it I feel is that now that you know where you're going, you're going to have a better, a little bit more confidence in what you're drafting, knowing that you're going to be picking certain things. Now, that said,
Mm.
I feel like the one downside to choosing your path and power early on is that there's going to be some absolute losers in this entire scenario, wherein sometimes, I feel like this is the best possible thing for Fires of Creation, and possibly, maybe the worst possible thing for reconstruction as a reconstruct as a power, let's say. So it's going to help certain paths, but again, at the same time, there's still going to be powers that are just not the best thing, or like foresight as a power might not get any love. But what this does do is it does boost the fact that Fires of Creation is no longer an auto, or it's no longer an auto pass if you haven't drafted more than 3 or 4 artifacts, let's say. It Fires of Creation is now something that you can really hope for. That said, it's definitely a gamble still. You're still rolling the dice that you're going to be drafting the artifacts that you want. But again, now that there's 6 cards to choose from, and the fact that there's the boost and call system, I think that having this at the beginning is something that's very important, especially since other card games already do it too, to decent success. When you're playing, if you're when you're playing Arena in Hearthstone, you choose your class before everything else. So you know if you're more geared towards mage or warlock or whatever, or even if you just have quests or if you have something that you want to play, you have that opportunity to go down the path of something that you're familiar with, that you know how to play, and that you want to have a more interesting experience with, especially since, I myself, big fan of Fires of Creation. Same thing with you, Mark.
Hmm.
Um,
I think it.
playing Fires of Creation without the standard package of artifacts that I'm very comfortable with, like your, be it the stretcher package or green artifacts or whatever. Um, it's different because you're going to pick Fires of Creation and not know what the hell comes up. So
Yeah.
oftentimes it's going to lean you more towards pulling out artifacts, any artifact that you see, just to support that path. And then you're going to be in colors that you're not necessarily comfortable with, but it's still a new experience. So I'm okay with it.
But you don't have to commit to the path at the beginning. You get the 3 choices and then you commit at the end. So you can try and draft those artifacts. And if you don't end up hitting as many as you like or the ones that you prefer, you can just switch to a different path.
Yeah. There's
Yeah,
also.
and that, yeah, it's a nice sort of like, like rescue power shoot kind of system, right? Like a safety
Mhm.
net.
There's also the system they added in about up. What was it? I forgot what they call it, but you can like kind of upvote or downvote the color choice. So like you could
Ah,
pick, oh,
yes, the culling
I
and
want more.
boosting.
Yeah, the culling and boosting. That was it. So I like, oh, I want more red. So you could boost red, and then you can probably get stretcher, more stretcher, or I want less purple, and then it would like show you less purple going forward. So that would actually really help with when you're drafting. For if you're trying to make fires, that actually would probably help a lot because this way you could pick one specific color that you know has more artifacts than another. Which is the one that has the most artifacts? Is it red? No, it's not red.
It
Who
might be
has the
yellow. I
most?
believe yellow has
Is
a
it yellow?
ton.
It's like yellow
Red
and
has
green
a
or something.
bunch as well. Green also. I mean, there's a fairly good
It
spread
might
of
be
them, but
even
in terms
actually.
of
It might be
I
like
even.
in
think
terms of
yellow has the best.
Yeah, yellow is
like
the
yeah,
best
in
one.
terms of playability, you're probably, if you're playing an artifact deck, um, you're probably going to want to boost like yellow and green, let's say, unless you hit like stretcher early. But you definitely want to be able to, now that there's the Cullen boost system. I don't know how I feel about Cullen boost, to be honest with you, because as somebody who plays a lot of limited, be it in Magic and Paper or whatnot, I just love the fact that part of it involves just making trying to grow a flower out of a pile of crap, like that's kind of how the a lot of the experience is, not necessarily with the deck building and making a symphony. It's a lot of it is just trying to do with what you have best, trying to create a beautiful harmony out of a washboard and a tub with a string kind of thing, and on a deck porch in Arkansas. But like that's to me is the beauty of it. And the whole Cullen boost system to me feels like a little bit of a crutch, but I understand why it's there, because of the fact that there's 6 colors, and oftentimes you're just not going to get what you want in terms of just selection. But now there's 6 cards, I believe, to select, and so there's even more option. Cullen boost gives a little bit more of a crutch in that scenario. Are you guys for the Cullen boost system? I know that you guys seem to be leaning more towards the fact that it's like a very, very good thing.
I just like to say the word culling, really. It's just a fun word to say. The culling, it just sounds very powerful. But I think the system's cool. I kind of like, I kind of think it's almost a little bit cheating the system. I mean, the whole idea of a draft is that you don't know what you're going to get, right? So if you're kind of have more control over what you're going to get, then what's separating this from constructed? You know what I mean? Like we're getting dangerously close to constructed. So I kind of agree with you in that. Like I don't really care for the culling and boosting or whatever, but I definitely think the path change was needed. So other than that, I think Arena is doing just fine.
I'm all for the boost and culling. Like, if I draft something like a hoarding hero or something with a lot of synergy, I definitely want to try and capitalize on drafting that card. And allowing me to do so just means the world.
Yeah, but that's the risk of draft, right? Is that you're trying to build something that's cohesive, but then you could get the chance that you don't get that. So if you're just increasing your chances to get exactly what you wanted, then that's, you know what I mean? Like it just feels like we're just sort of going into a constructed match.
Uh,
I
I
don't know.
mean,
Maybe this
most
is a
of the time
personal
in
opinion.
arena, we're playing three colors, right? And
Sure.
most of constructed sticks to two colors.
I don't know. I watched
So
someone play a mono purple today in arena.
Well, that's the thing right now is the fact that a lot of it is that you're trying to just and we discussed the strategy of drafting earlier on, where you typically your first 6 to 8 rounds you're just drafting the best card, and then you don't have you don't choose an identity until you have to, and you start figuring out what you have that's working and what might not work, and you sort of center around your big pieces. But I find with the culling and boosting now, you're not going to see, there's certain cards colors that you're just not going to see, certain card colors that you're going to have a very low chance of seeing, and then everything else. And now that there's more cards to be seen, it's going to be a scenario where 3 color decks are not as important or not as likely, because of the fact that there's this cull and boost system, an extra choice, and the fact that you'll have the odds in your favor of saying, well, let's just my first 5 cards, three of my best card choices were blue and red, so I'm just gonna boost blue and red and cull yellow and green, let's say, which might not be very good to match with those colors, let's say, and then we go from there, and then all of a sudden it's you just literally select everything that you can from those 2 colors, and it's no longer a problem. Like or deck building is a little bit easier, playing is a little bit easier, and mana management is a little bit easier as well. I think that with the culling and boosting and the extra card slot selection, playing 3 color decks in limited is going to be a matter of preference and not a matter of necessity, let's say.
I wish there
that'll be
was
interesting.
I wish there was a way to do this competitively. Like, I hope that that's something. I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit about doing ladder with draft, but I kind of hope that there's a system, kind of like the tournament system we use for the other like the gem wars and things like that. But I kind of hope that there'd be one in the future for drafting, so we could set up competitive draft. That would be really cool.
I think I'm not sure, but maybe there will be a draft ladder, an arena ladder.
Yeah, arena ladder would be great. But like, if there was like some mode where we could set up like, okay, here's 10 players, and they're gonna like we talked about this a little bit with Caleb. Like they do it in Eternal, where they do like the sealed the style that you
Mhm.
like, Flake, where it's the one where they keep passing the cards or the
Draft,
deck.
yes,
Yeah,
standard
yeah,
draft.
the draft. Yeah. If there was a way to do that in Mythgard in kind of a competitive tournament setting, that would be really neat. I don't know how doable that is with online stuff, but that would be pretty cool to have that.
I played a couple artifact tournaments that were kind of that format. Started out as constructed, and then top 8 was a draft format.
Yeah, that's kind of neat. Well,
It was really cool.
I think with these
The-
changes that they made, it's opened the door to do more things like maybe like that.
There was I mean, given the fact that Hearthstone's limited culture is very strong, an arena mode in Hearthstone has a lot of dedicated followers to it. Blizzard did eventually cater to that community and release statistics of, I believe it was average win rates, or average amounts of games won per arena run. Knowing that it's a 3 losses and you're out scenario
Mhm.
or whatnot, it became a scenario. It became a very big badge of honor to see where you sat, because if you're averaging 7 wins per run, you're doing excellent. You're doing very good. And I don't know what the top of the ladder was in terms of, but they would release those statistics and have like a monthly update where they would release the top 100 arena performers with X amount of minimum games played or X amount of minimum arena runs or whatnot. I think that that's something that they could actually do over here with very good success if they did that. And I'm not saying that I only play the game because there's a badge of honor at the end of it or some type of trinket or some type of trophy. I play the game because I enjoy the game, but I would be a lot more enticed to grind to grind arena if there was a some type of ladder system to it, and wins and losses not necessarily are the best way to make that happen. Like, for instance, Magic has the same ranking system. They have the same ladder for constructed as they do for limited. If you win, you gain a spot. If you lose a spot, and then you progress the ladder like that. I don't think that that would work here. I think it has to take from the Hearthstone perspective of tossing in that kind of average win per run, average wins per arena run. I think that's one way to do it, but that might need a complete revamp of how they make arena gauntlet and all that other stuff happen. But I really would like to see them have some type of um, statistic release and that is officially acknowledged with some type of prize structure to it. And we could talk about finishes and stuff like that and competitive ladder and everything till the cows come home, because frankly there's still nothing settled. We still don't even know what the prizes are going to be for the top finishing players on this particular constructed ladder, right? We have no idea what's associated with finishing first and finishing last and whatnot and everything in between. Again, we're here to talk about the changes, and with arena being a big one, the one that we not that we skirted over, but we specifically saved for last is just this gigantic influx of card changes and tweaks and balances. And if you haven't seen them, if you go and check out the MythGARDgame.com website and click on news, you'll see the latest patch with all the notes and everything. I want to just ask you guys your first impressions of the patch, and as it was announced a little while ago, and then as the details of it were slowly leaked out via Discord by Fu. Eventually, it touched down midday on Friday the 22nd, and now we're about a week into it. And I want to ask your initial impressions of everything we saw from a card balance perspective. And Wholesome, I'll let you start on this one. We're going to go into every single card, and we're going to do kind of a very, very quick run through evaluation of every single change. But I just want to ask your initial impression of it.
My initial impression was hype, absolute hype. I love the idea that they're just buffing cards that aren't played. And only a couple cards got nerfed. I mean, a handful, I guess. But the fact that they're making a bunch of cards that aren't played and constructed, you know, everybody's just testing around, seeing what they can get away with right now. And I love that.
Oh, absolutely. I have my own thoughts on buffing and nerfing cards, but Mark, I want to get first before I want to get to your initial impression. Just like the first wave of cards that came through and just seeing what was changed and whatnot. But now you have the full picture of it. What do you think of the changes that occurred?
Well, I got very excited about that stretcher didn't get touched. So I immediately queued in with my stretcher deck, and the first game I played against was a green-yellow, and I got my ass kicked, and I went, well, that's the patch, I guess. And so my first impressions were, well, I guess not much changed. But as I got more deeper into it and I started nitpicking certain cards, I saw like, oh, okay, I see how this got buffed and this got kind of nerfed a bit. And what I like is that they didn't just go crazy with nerfing all the cards that were considered too strong. They also went through a bunch of cards that were underutilized and gave them a buff, which I think is really neat. And they also changed some abilities, and I will say one specifically because one of my favorite cards, which is Lort, and he got a complete overhaul basically, and he has a brand new mill ability. And I really like that because it made it a little easier to try to justify to put him into a deck now. So I like that they made changes to cards that people normally wouldn't play, and now I've seen more people play them, including myself today. I played a bunch of stuff that I've never played these cards before, and I finally put them into a deck, and I'm like, wow, these are fun.
Yeah, the interesting part about this is that a lot of the times the card changes that you see from a nerfing buffing perspective is involving the cost or the standard stat line, right? Where it's either, oh, we're going to make it one more point expensive, or we're going to nerf the strength of the unit by one, blah, 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 blah. There's so many different dynamics that of cards that were touched, and we're going to go through every single one of them. But one thing that I want to talk about real quick before we dive into every single card that got touched and kind of give it a little bit of a once over is the fact that I do not necessarily agree with the fact that every single card that is not particularly played on needs to get a buff. Because at any point there's going to be cards that you see that are not going to get played. It's just the fact of the matter.
Oh, sure.
Because And that's the thing. And if you continuously say that, well, this card doesn't see enough play, let's buff it, and then it only sees play because it needs to be buffed to a point where it's an attractive option for you, wherein it then replaces something within that card's sphere of either cost or utility, and then that replaces whatever the hell was there prior to it. So from that perspective, I feel like if you're trying to make every single card equal and playable, that you just can't do it because there's too many layers to cards to make sure that everything, like a Blood Idol at 2 cost is not the same as, let's say a Venom Fang at 2 cost, or a Stone Mother at 2 cost, or, Assault the Fields at 2 cost, or whatever else. I'm just saying that when there's an outcry for people who want to see absolutely every card on every single day that you're going to be playing a game, there has to be cards that are not necessarily good today, but that may be good tomorrow. For instance, artifact decks are good, they're fun, but they're not tier 1 because there's not enough artifacts to support them. So what do? Do you buff Fires of Creation so that when new artifacts come out, then Fires of Creation all of a sudden becomes OP and everybody plays it, and then everyone cries for a nerf? Yes, I know you say yes, but I'm just saying that in the long game, cards will be released and everything will kind of come out. And you talk about this from other types of card games. I know that it's a stupid meme that I kind of perpetrate, but in Gwent, I always talk about buffing the Arcaspore and saying that why is the Arcaspore like the only plant tribal in the entire game? When are we getting more plants and this and that and whatever? And it is what it is. I'm just saying. But like down the line, other vampires might get more, so that the Strigoi that makes them cheaper, then it becomes playable. Because if you're complaining that card is not playable now, well, down the line, there's going to be a good chance that card becomes playable.
Well,
so
here's the thing, though. I understand what you're saying, but a lot of the cards that I was specifically mentioning, that I actually didn't mention anything specific other than Lord, but a lot of the cards didn't get an overbuff to make it super attractive, where, hell, I got to put this in my deck. It was more of their ability got slightly tweaked to make it a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? To make it a little bit more cohesive with other decks, to attractive, sure, but to make it a little bit more synergistic with other type archetypes, right? So like one of the biggest things with Lort, the problem with Lort was that he was a tough card to keep alive, and it was like really one of the only very few mill options, and his ability was that he got rid of he banishes the top 2 of your opponent's deck every time he breached. Well, now they made Lort a lurker, so now you can protect him from getting attacked and immediately removed off the board. And now he gets the power ability, so now his power increases every time that he breaches, and then it increases the amount of cards that you're milling. So they actually made him a really big mill component. So now when you're thinking about, okay, I need to make a mill deck, Lort's like really kind of what you're going to go to build that. But it's not impossible for someone to remove it. They just made Lort more attractive to want to try to make a mill archetype. And that's kind of like what I like. It's like they kind of encouraged other archetypes from taking a little bit of a scene now to kind of, I guess, broaden out the types of archetypes you could do.
I have this weird feeling that we're one expansion away from Lort being public enemy number 1.
And I can't wait for that day.
No, I definitely agree with you in that regard. I do think that it's going to be I'm telling you, there's going to be a day where people are going to be just clamoring for this card to go away, because
sure.
it's one support piece away from ruining everyone's experience.
Yeah, I mean, mill. I said it today on my stream because I've been trying to make mill work for a long time. This is the closest that I've been able to make mill work now with the way Lort got buffed. But I said, like, if there was just like one more card that made it so that my opponent discarded something or drew something extra, if there was just one more card that did that, that would make this feel so much better. And I feel like we're that, like you just said, that's that one expansion, 1 or 2 cards away from making Lort just absolutely disgusting.
I'll agree. I mean, I'll definitely agree with the fact that, like, and this is what we're talking about, right? Is that you don't need to buff things to the point where you have to play them because they're so good, but Lort is part of an archetype that is not fully supported yet.
Right. It's not a focus archetype, right? It's like a support archetype to something else. You know? Yeah.
And it's that right there is one of your anchor cards for mill, because it's definitely has one of the mill thing, the mill dynamic of it, much like necromantic is an anchor card for the reanimator,
Yeah.
reanimation type decks. So it feels like, imagine if there was another card that really boosted reanimation, or there's another card that really boosted mill. Then suddenly these pop into the meta, and you're wondering, you're like, man, does Lort should Lort lose Lurker? Like, you're gonna get to
Oh
that point where
sure.
you're
Oh
gonna be like,
sure. Or
oh,
make it
should
more
Lort start
expensive.
with yeah, should Lort maybe have start with one energy and not two? So I feel like when you go ahead and you over nerf or over buff a card, or sorry, rather over buff a card to make it attractive to play, it's because it doesn't necessarily have what it needs to be playable at that particular time. That isn't to say that it's not going to be a card that you want to play down the line. And one of the, I mean, in Magic, it's very much this is something I learned early on, where cards that are bad today are one expansion away from being auto includes in certain archetypes. And I know this because I used to buy it and trade and sell my Magic cards as they kind of came out, and new sets would come in, and decks that I play were no longer viable. And then cards that I used to sell and trade in for like $5, a set later would be worth 20 to 25, because suddenly that card is necessary for a whatever deck that is super powerful. So, it's not a clean comparison, especially in the digital format. But what I'm saying in this case is that over buffing cards to make them attractive to play, it sometimes it just kind of it creates a future problem, wherein, okay, well, Lort is really good now, so maybe I'll play some mill, because mill right now is not good because there's not enough things, but this one card is really good.
Yeah.
When more mill support comes out, it suddenly we're back at the point where, like, this happened to Fire Eater, right? Fire Eater got buffed and nerfed and buffed and nerfed a few times.
They actually put Fire Eater right back to the ability he had before they nerfed him.
Exactly,
Remember, we talked about it in the last podcast. Remember, I said, "Oh boy, I hope they bring it back to its old version where it cost 1 power to deal damage, the fire damage." And guess what they did? That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, and rightfully so, I would imagine, because there's nobody rides for free, and neither the Fire Eater does either. So in this case, that's where we're at, and we'll see how this goes. But all right, so I'm going to go through every single card, and I want to take like 30 seconds per card here, so that we can just kind of bust through these and just talk about them real quick. So the first one I want to talk to you about is, we'll go with color by color, Blood Idol. Blood Idol went from a 3-cost 1/7, Defender Life Tap Immobile, to a 1/4 Armor 1 for 2. Now, hit me with your thoughts on each of these. So I'll give you each about 15 seconds and kind of give it a little bit of a rating.
Blood Idol, very playable.
I think
It's looking real good.
I don't think it changed. I just like I haven't seen anyone try it yet. So I just, for me personally, I just think it's still good. Like, I thought it was good the way it was before, but this to me personally, it means nothing. That buff or nerf or whatever I call it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, Blood Idol to me it's a card that's very attractive. Aggro itself just kind of got kicked in the teeth a little bit this patch, but I feel like Blood Idol is in that spot right now where you're in the 2-drop spot in yellow, which sometimes you want to play Yahui. But if you're playing this as an immobile unit, it's not like it can be danced around. It's a very, very strong anti aggro unit, but in the yellow slot, a lot of the times you're dropping Maze of Yatika, which is already a defender and immobile. So adding more of that to clog up a board might not be the greatest. I'll say it's a good change, but I don't think it's a big enough change to have an impact.
I don't personally like immobile units, so it's not really something that I would be looking at.
Yeah, me neither. Riot Guard. The Riot Guard, went from after defending in combat, the minion it exchanges with is stun. Now it's after any combat. So it's a 1/2 for 2, and the stun ability.
I like it. I think you can do some cool stuff with this. Use like teleporting it around the board and stunning and stalling. Yellow's the king of stall, and just giving it more tools to do that seems good.
Mark?
Yeah, this is another one that I didn't really use a whole lot. I don't really think the change is that major, really, but this might be a card that is a little bit more attractive to If you're looking for an early yellow drop, this might be a more attractive card now to drop in. I've been trying to make an all soldier yellow deck for quite a long time, so this might be something I try out now. Now that this got a little bit of a change.
Yeah, I'll say this is a pretty insignificant change. This card's not going to get played either way. So I truly believe
I
it.
think it really just depends on the meta, guys.
Yeah, true.
A card's only as good as the meta it's in, right?
Yeah,
So we can't really say too much right now, but that's what I was gonna say when you were talking about over buffing cards, Flake. Is I don't think they're over buffing them. They're only gonna be as buff as the meta they're in.
that's what they said. It's like at the
Well,
gym.
well, no. I mean, let's be fair here. You can overbuff a card, and the
Oh,
meta.
for sure. And the meta will just gravitate towards that card eventually. But
Well,
I
expansions
think
always
for the
shake it up, right? Expansions will always shake it up, no matter what.
but I don't think with this balance patch they definitely made a card that, oh my gosh, this card has to be played. This is just too good not to be played.
Yeah, I kind of agree there. I don't think there was any one card that feels like that, or so far yet, anyway.
Bob Bonsai Vaquero is now able to target anyone instead of just the actual opponent.
I never played this card. I ever like a bunch of people tell me how great this card is, and I've never played it. And like now, I'm kind of like, well, maybe I should give it a shot now.
Bob
Yeah,
is a great card if it's a win more card, and so you need to have it. You need to protect it. You need to have the excess mana to play it, and you can only do it like once per turn. So it's not exactly it's not exactly the greatest thing in the world
It's
because you still have
expensive.
to pay for it.
It's
Yeah,
expensive.
and then you're kind of gambling on the fact that the card you draw is going to be expensive enough in order to have an impact on it. Now, that said, you still draw a card. It's still pay 3 to draw a card, deal damage. It's exceptional, and it has the same lurker status and cost and stat package as Zolea. But
I don't.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
No,
finish your
I
thought.
was just gonna say Zolea has free actions,
Yeah,
and this guy paid 3 for it. Um, I think that if you're building a deck that is a control deck, this is kind of like a if you don't have Zolea, this could be a reasonable alternative. But I still think that this would never make it into somebody's deck that is not heavily geared towards heavy control.
yeah. This is to me. I don't think this card is going to get. I don't think that's enough of a change to make this card get played more because like I said, it's expensive. It's 5 for 2 gems, and then it's going to cost you another 3 mana in order to draw the card and deal damage. That's 8 mana that you need in order to just if you want to try it in one turn. If you wait for Bob for the next turn, Bob could get easily removed because your opponent might be holding on to removal for a card specifically like that. That's like a big card for them to get rid of. So I don't really think Bob is going to see bigger play. But however, I think Bob is actually kind of interesting in an arena format. So you might see him over there a little bit more.
I agree.
All right, let's go on to the next one. This is one that really hit me real hard is Harvester. I do not like this change to Harvester. I think it's an okay change, but Harvester to me was a workhorse of a card. I think that the stat distribution, the abilities, and the gem restriction of 3 yellow gems for the cost, I think was perfect right on the money. It was very much it was like a can't lose play. It was a big body with a life gain ability and a favorable demise effect. So I thought that it was a card that did not need to be touched because it's not a game changing card. If this gets played against you, you're not crapping yourself in fear. It's just a 6/6 with no overrun. However, it was a nice catch up card that you could play to stall out and maybe get back into a game. I thought that hitting this with the changing the demise effect was unnecessary, and I'm pouring it out for my boy Harvester. But adding a Maze of Yatiku instead of just straight up drawing a card it's adding extra steps. It's too many middlemen now.
Yeah. All I'm going to say about this card, Flake, is get that corn out of my face. That's all I'm going
Get
to
that
say.
corn out of my face. Correct.
Yeah, I dusted both my harvesters. I need that sweet essence, and I don't see myself wanting to play maze after my harvester just died. I need to reestablish my board. I can't take another turn to just sit there and play maze and hope to draw a better card off of it. and
Yeah,
I'd rather play one of the twins in that slot.
yeah, agreed. 100% agreed. And I would rather burn that Maze of Yatiku for mana rather than play it. I mean, by the time that this becomes, you know, an effective card, you're on turn 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever, and a Maze of Yatiku is not a card that you want to have in your hand at that point. Miso Libre, I think this is a very, very, very fair nerf, and one that I'm upset about because this is a card that I abused the hell out of for a long, long time. Miso Libre losing just one health bar is a fair. It's definitely a fair nerf. You're no longer getting fair trades with things like Iron Belly Wyvern or let's say Valkyrie Tough and things like that. Things that have 3 attack right out of the bag. Miso Libre having that 3/4 ability now nerfed to a 3/3 is kind of allowing this card to be a fair inclusion to a deck, but not an auto inclusion.
I agree. I think his stall ability, including the trading up with the 3/4 that he was, is just a little too much, especially when yellow has like Helm and Olama Ring and other tools to make him even buffer. I just think, yeah, this is super fair nerf to this guy.
I don't think that there's a um I don't think it's a big deal because I still see this card this whole weekend. I've seen this card constantly still. So because the constant change and it's the ability is what you were putting it in for, but the only thing, like you said, is the trade ability is a little different. So that does, I think, out of all the cards we're going to go through today, this is probably the fairest and most tiny little change that actually, like, you wouldn't think that the health makes a big impact, but it actually does without actually making the card completely unplayable anymore.
All right, Scourge of Serpents. Now, for all you sneaky snakes out there, you're no longer creating a 1/1 Temple Snake across from the enemy lane for twice the cost. Now you're doing a 2/2 Striking Viper with
Woo!
Alpha Strike. Now, this
Hell
was a card.
yes.
Now, the problem with this card is that it's fantastic, it's great, it's awesome. You know, you're creating these 2/2s with Alpha Strike. Sounds amazing. You first need to make sure that you're losing by a lot in order to get excessive value off this, and then you need to also make sure that you do not have any other creatures blocking the creation of these snakes by being across from minions. This is a card that in the mythic slot you are very unhappy to pull out of a pack. In my opinion, this change is insignificant, means nothing because it's still a card that is never going to get played.
I don't agree. I actually play this card sometimes because when I go full on snakes. You know how I get what I told you, like what I get with my when I build decks. I go, here's this keyword, and let's put every card that exists with that keyword in it. So when I do that kind of crazy stuff, this card goes in there. So I think it's kind of neat. Then I could create a 2/2 Striking Viper. But like you said, it's a tough card to pull off. I don't think you're going to see it at all.
I just think it depends how much aggro we're gonna see and how many go wide struts. And it might be the perfect card in that meta.
And think about if you pair this with the Empress Serpentine Empress, that's a great combination right there. Because now you got Alpha Strike Snakes with Deadly.
I mean, even with the llama rings, like it could get out of hand quick.
Sure.
My issue with it is that if you're going to get a lot of value off of it, you're already way behind on a go wide board, meaning that you've already taken about 3 or 4 turns worth of damage, and you're only playing to catch up, and that's not effective. But I do see what you mean, especially with the yellow's ability to get extra value off of their creatures, and if you do have a Serpentine Empress to sort of back this up, you could be great. But I feel like that's too many variables to really make this a good card. Leading now to the Fleeting Thunderbird, which in my opinion got the most one of the most interesting revamps. So the Fleeting Thunderbird now is a awaken +1 energy for every card in your opponent's hand, and then you can give it the standard action of deal damage to your opponent equal to the energy. The issue with this is this needs a volition to back it up, which has now also been nerfed. Meaning that, let's say your opponent has a full hand of 9 cards, you slam it down, and now you got to wait for 1 turn for your opponent to just accept their fate of taking a crap ton of damage. And in that time frame, your opponent can respond to kill the Thunderbird. Your opponent can burn cards and play cards to empty their hand as much as possible to lessen the effect of Fleeting Thunderbird. Or they can just, like I said, just kill it, deal with it, ignore it. So I feel like Fleeting Thunderbird's a very intriguing card, but I feel like there might be some problems with it.
I don't
I
really
feel
have.
like you could make some fun jank decks with it with Ringmaster. Uh, yeah, there are a lot of things with Stretcher and Dragon Tooth. You could do some interesting things with it, but I think it's definitely limited or for the jank players.
I don't really have an opinion on this card because I don't have it and I've never played it. So and I've never seen it played. So I have literally
I've
no
seen
opinion on
Flake
it.
play it.
Yeah, you played today,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Didn't you? You played it today.
No, no, no. I
Oh,
played it in pre-patch where I had this thing where you basically in the old version where every time it breaches with and it had overrun, it gets +1/+1 permanently. So I
mm,
had that plus that purple card that bounces it back to the hand to make it permanently cheaper. So I'd play it, bounce it, and then I would slam it next to a sidecar on a giant stairway, and I would just so it would cost one. So you play it, you smash face, you play it, you smash face. It was an OTK deck that worked one out of every 5 to 6 times because you had to play 3 colors and you had to have a very, very specific gem count in your bar in order to be able to sort of slam for 28 damage or whatnot. But um, by then, you already got rushed down because everybody played Red Rush and it didn't matter. So um, now let's talk about the antivirus. The antivirus is pretty much the same card, except now not only does it infect adjacent units on demise, but at the end of the turn, this is a significant buff to this card.
yeah. I love blight decks. In fact, I can't wait to make my Michael Scott's Race for the Cure deck with with the antivirus because anyone who watches The Office will get that reference. But the antivirus, like just having heavy blight deck was always a really cool thing. So I love that they buffed Yanavirus, and I can't wait to play more. I've actually seen a lot of this weekend. A lot more people are playing around with this card now.
Yeah, I could definitely see people playing it, especially since eager recruits are kind of making their way back in more orange decks. They kind of went away when Orpheum was a thing, and then Fire Eaters kind of just annihilated all the eager recruits. And I think this will definitely keep orange in check.
Next, we have the Vibrant Questal. I mean, we don't really need to talk much about it. Just got to buff one to its health bar. Still
Hold me
not nice
back.
to play.
Yeah.
I don't. It's
Nah, it's
agile
not
and
good.
it has a. It's agile. I think that's its best.
Yeah, but it
best
still gets
feature.
taken out by so many things, so it's really not very
Yeah.
significant.
All right, here's a big
Yeah.
one. Volition. Volition at 3 versus Volition at 2. My prediction for Volition that it was going to stay at 2. However, it was going to be a double yellow gem. However, they just made it one more expensive.
Yeah.
Just change things.
No. I've already
Yeah.
got my ass kicked by green yellow with freaking the Boneyard guy, and he comes out and then you just throw Volition on it and it's OTK. I mean, I know OTKs exist in all card games, but man, this just feels like I just felt like, man, it doesn't feel like Volition made any difference at all. But I know that Wholesome said yes, so I'm interested to hear what Wholesome has to say about it.
Well, I think this, along with the Bald Mountain nerf, really slows the deck down. I think they need a couple more turns than they used to. And if you haven't beaten them by the time that comes around and they've collected all those tools, I think it's fair that they win in OTK me.
Yeah, that's a very good assessment. And the fact again remains that this is likely going to be paired up in a green deck with Boneyard Abomination, of course, being one of your big boys that you can slam with. But the fact that Bald Mountain does no longer cheapens your spells, this definitely helps to cull that entire strategy. And this just makes it excessively more important now to kill Cola Box when you see them so that they can't punch above their weight and have 13 mana in the bank in order to volition a few times and have those one OTK decks. I still think the archetype is alive. I just think that the archetype is no longer tier S. It's just tier 1. I think it's still a viable deck. Venom Fang Mutant just got an extra spot of health. I don't think we really need to talk about it, especially in the 2-drop spot. Yellow has a lot of 2-drops, and this is just another decent option for yellow, I think. I don't know, unless you guys have anything to talk about this one. I think it's just sort of a skip over.
No, more blight. I mean, there's nothing really much to say. More blight. Yay.
All right. Wonder Drug got a nice little subtle buff. I say nice little subtle buff because the amount of times that I'm on 8 health and play a 4 life 1 card Wonder Drug versus when I'm on 7 life playing an 8 life 2 card Wonder Drug, it always seems to be that one little help. But Wonder Drug now allows you to draw 2 cards and gain 8 life when you're on 8 life or less. When it used to be 7, um, it just kind of makes it like a smidge better. I don't. It does
I
not.
don't.
It's not going to change how this card is played or if it's included or not. It's the
Yeah, I
same
don't know
card.
why they did that though. I mean, it was already pretty strong at the 7. Why do we have to make it 8? I don't. I
No,
don't
no,
understand.
I honestly do not know. But they did it, and sounds good to me. Off to blue now. Stone Mother just got a 1 point cheaper. No one's going to play this card either way. I don't think this card really matters.
I play this card in my defender only deck.
Well,
So
okay, so
this is fun for
allow me
me.
to. I'm just gonna blanket statement this. If your deck, when I say this is not going to see play, I mean it's not going to see play in like people playing competitive ladder at a high level, like in terms of big time constructed. If you're a deck designer who wants to play decks that have very thematic approaches, like Mark's defender deck or whatnot, or if you're playing a soldier deck and you want to include that stunning soldier, that's one thing. I'm just saying that this is, you don't include this in a deck that's going to look to top 8 in a tournament.
Yeah, probably not.
Braggy is next up. Braggy, very subtle change. Everything remains the same except the fact that you can no longer turn to Frenzy with this bad boy, or second turn Frenzy with it. Frenzy now costs 3 mana instead energy rather than 2. I think that this is when Rhino really hits it right on the head of in terms of a nerf. You want your mythics to be powerful. Braggy was always an auto include in blue, and now I think it just made it so that it's not an imminent, like right away threat. You're not dropping it and then playing a blackened Yotun on turn 5 and giving it Frenzy immediately, creating 2 massive threats on the board. I think that this is a phenomenal, you know, way to balance a card. And I think that this is a very, very good balance. I don't know what you guys think about this one.
I
Oh,
agree.
I wholeheartedly agree. That card needed some kind of nerf, and I think they did a perfect job of nerfing it the right way. Because he's warded in a 3/5, it's kind of hard to deal with that in one turn, depending on what kind of deck you're playing.
Yeah, this and the next card that you're going to mention were cards that were becoming what we were talking about earlier about auto include cards, and that's something you want to kind of get rid of. You don't want to let that linger too long. So I think you'll see a little bit, maybe a little less Braggy, not really probably, but maybe just a little less because I think a lot of people were only putting Braggy in for getting the Frenzy on turn 2, and so now that you can't get Frenzy as quickly, you may see people like a lot of aggro was playing Braggy for that reason. So you might see it definitely leave aggro decks, but it's still a great card for control or mid range.
Demolition Speedway is the one that you're mentioning here. This is a card that was very prominent pre-patch because it fit into so many aggressive decks and red blue lists. Demo Speedway now costing 2, and I think a lot of people may underestimate just the limitations of double gemming cheap cards. It really, really, really handcuffs you in terms of your path of progression of playing in early game. If you're playing double blue gem for 2 cost, it means that you can't play any red for 3 turns. So, or for the first 2 turns. So it really, it bottlenecks you in terms of your lines of play. I think this is a very fair nerf because I think that this card is still, it's good enough that you're going to put it in many cards and it's many decks. And I think it's a card that can even have late, it's not a card that you necessarily hate drawing late game either. I think this is a good two cost card. And I think that the extra gem on this is the right type of flavor. My prediction was that it was just going to be +1/+0 in overrun. And I think that they just made it a little bit more difficult to deploy, means that you might be able to sort of, if you're playing against it, circumvent some difficult choices that you're going to be faced with.
I think this was a fair change, and someone was saying how it kind of sucks that sometimes you have to rely on the gem cost to nerf and buff. But this is a card where you don't really want to change its ability necessarily because the ability wasn't really the issue. It was how early it was being played and how it was being played that was the issue. So this kind of solves that a little bit, and it slows down those aggro decks. There's nothing wrong with aggro, but there is something wrong with I'm absolutely lost the game by turn 5 aggro. That is just like, that should not exist. So this kind of slows it down a little, and you can still keep it in your aggro deck, but it's just going to take you a little bit longer, and you got to play a little bit better in order to get this card right.
Yeah, I think you were just able to take some early trades way too easily with
Hmm.
the one blue gem.
All right, next up we've got Draugr. Real quickly with this one, I think this is a cool card that can create some interesting combo type decks. You know, slamming it down with a Frecky sidecar and really just smashing through a deck. But took a big boost in terms of costs. 3 blue gems and a 7 cost card, but it is a beast of a card.
Yeah, they gave it a hell of an ability buff, and I actually played this card today because of that ability buff, and every time I slammed it down, my opponent removed it immediately because of how afraid he was. So I think that like this card, you're gonna probably see people try to play it, but I think that people are definitely afraid of this card.
Yeah, I have not played this card or played against it, so I don't have much experience with this one, but it looks super interesting.
Yeah, I
I,
think people are eventually going to find this card.
I
They're
think it's
going to
gonna
get to it.
I think it's gonna end up, and I'm surprised that they got such a big buff here because it feels like that's a myth. Doesn't it feel like a mythic card? Like the ability is pretty large. Like it almost feels like a mythic kind of thing.
Yeah, to a degree. Um,
I,
well,
yeah,
again,
it's
no
good at a
warded.
rare.
Yeah, no warded, no no armor, stuff like that. It's got overrun, but I mean, a lot of blue big boys do. Tier Monimund got a nice little like change to its abilities. I got no comments on this one.
Yeah, me neither. I've had this card in my collection for such a long time, and I've tried to throw him into decks, and I've never really found a comfortable place for it. But I just don't feel like even the change is really enough for me to still justify putting it in. But I did see some people try it out today, and it's a good card, man. With Frenzy on it, it's pretty good card.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're gonna see this coming up in the upcoming meta.
All right. Now over to red. We got to pick up the pace on going through here. But
All right, lightning speed. Here we go. Lightning rounds.
And
Enyo Murder's Muse. I got no opinions. Never played the card, and I'm not particularly frightened by it.
I am. I've been testing with this card and it is quite nuts. Combine it with Red Carnival or Stairway, and switching from a standard action to a utility action is insane. You
Yeah,
can
that's a
activate it the same turn you play it. It's nuts.
yeah, and at that point, it just becomes a huge deal. But I feel like you need to. There's a lot that needs to go on for that to happen. I'm interested to see how that one flushes out. If I ever, if it ever beats me, I'll owe you a Coke.
Alrighty.
Howling Abyssal, demise all players. So it's another discard effect, but down to 4, 4 or less. So that just kind of again, it's a card that usually never makes it into any
Nope.
particular deck.
Now, Flake,
Nope.
you're gonna want to play this. I played it today, and I will share you the list. If you pair this with Dragon's Teeth and Stretcher, and you make your opponent overdraw for a little while, and then you slam this bad boy down. Oh my! I won a couple games today by doing this combination. And at that point, you don't care what you discard, and they just discard, and you watch Stretcher just smack their face, and it's a beautiful thing because they do it
Yeah,
on their turn, and then and then it just ends the turn, and Stretcher just hits for like 20 damage. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've seen this happen. I mean, this was in early alpha lists of stretcher decks I've made, and it never really made it past anything because the amount of times that you have to slam it down, and then also you have to understand that this hits you as well. So when you're both drawing cards from stretcher, you're prone to losing out on this, and your opponent typically, if they're being stretched, will tend to play out a lot of cards. Now, it doesn't mean to say that you're not gonna, maybe hit a home run or two with this, but I think for the 4 cost slot. It's cool. It's definitely a cool card. I just, I feel like it's still not unplayable. It's just not. It's very thematic. Panic Raider now gives you a sort of a little bit of a hit when you play it. I don't think that if you're red, you even give a crap about taking damage if you're playing Panic Raider. So I don't think it's a very I don't think that the change to
It's
panic raider changes anything.
It's a fair change though because it gives more risk to the reward, right? We've talked about this before with MythGARD cards that for every risk or for every reward there's a risk to the card as well. So this was one of those cards that was all reward, no risk, and so now it adds a little bit by taking 1 life when you attack with it.
Yeah, good point.
All right. Let's see. Where did I miss that list? Serapis, False Apostle. No opinion on that one. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to say.
Nope.
No, I never even played it, so
Yeah,
I don't.
perfect. Wings of Abaddon no longer has overrun, but it did sort of get fixed in terms of actually getting the ability change from killing something. So
Yeah,
it's
thank
still a
God
pain
for
in the
that.
ass.
But thank
But
God it doesn't have overrun.
yeah, that would be crazy. I think that the overrun with it was a little bit over the top. I think this is a nice, perfect change to it.
Agreed.
Yeah, overrun was probably the only way that they could get through usually, and this is definitely going to slow red down.
Avenging Alpha, just a little more difficult to deploy. Same cost, but an extra green gem. I'm always
I,
okay with that as a change.
I don't get this nerf, but sure.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah,
I
that's what I'm
didn't
saying.
really understand it either.
I don't think that it was necessary, but
No.
it's a very subtle nerf because by the time you're at 4 mana, typically you'll have the crystals to play it. Bald Mountain no longer makes your spells 1 cost reduced, though it is cheaper now to recover a card from the graveyard. I think this is a really okay change because I wasn't thinking Bald Mountain was over the top, especially since you can remove enchantments, but Bald Mountain now. Feelings on this change?
It was needed.
I never.
Definitely, just being able to combo that many volitions in a turn because of the reduced cost, even chaining deported detains. Yeah, I can see why they did that, and I'm happy about it.
Yeah, Green was getting out of control with the spells, so this is pretty fair.
All right, deported now. Speaking of deported detain, deported now is 2 green gems, meaning you're going to need a nice bank of green gems in order to pull off a few of these in a row. I think that's a decent change
Yep.
there. I'm like
Makes it harder to do it in the same turn, which was very popular. You detain and deport all in one turn on your fourth or fifth turn, which is absolutely crazy. So now it's going to actually you got to think about it a little bit more before you do both.
Yeah, not that big of a nerf, honestly. You're gonna have a lot of green gems anyways with whatever deck you're playing this in.
Dora, a card that is never going to be seen play. It's a self-mill type of strategy, and self-mill in Reanimator. There's other better ways to put the things you want in the graveyard.
I don't get this one. Like, why this is? It was already a card that wasn't really that great to begin with, and now you just made it worse because now I have to put the top card of my deck into the Boneyard. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would I? This makes me not want to play it even more.
Now, hold on. Now, like we said, it might be bad now, but it might be integral to future.
Maybe
Self-mill, man. I'm telling you.
But there's nothing that interacts. There's nothing that interacts with self-mill yet, so that doesn't really, you know what I mean? Like, there's no card that interacts. That like, there's no benefit for me to self-mill just yet.
Yet. Wendish Giant. Pretty much we found where that gem on the Avenging Alpha came from. The Wendish Giant just shedding one of those green gems, same card. Otherwise, the Invincible City. I mean, your opponent gains 2 life is gone, so that's out of there.
I never played this card either. I don't understand why the Giant got the buff. I really don't understand that. Was it because it wasn't being played enough? I don't understand that card being buffed.
It's possible. I mean, in the 4 spot, a 5/5 for 4 is just a vanilla type card. I think it's okay, but I guess in the 4 spot, there's better things to play.
Maybe.
Let's see what else.
Koshi,
the Deathless just got rid of the negative element. Whenever your opponent creates a minion, it loses ability. I feel like this is a card that would never, ever, ever get a chance to ult, given the fact that your opponent's just playing cards every turn and you're not catching up as fast as possible. So, not a big fan of this. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of this card to begin with, and I think that now it's still not a good card, but it's
just a tough card to play. It's really difficult to get this card to work right.
Here's a great one. Night Hag. Night Hag no longer it awakens, it stuns the minion across from it, but now it can move around.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. That's kind of nutsy.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see this in a lot of green decks.
Yeah, this is going to be an exceptional card, especially for the cost of 3. It is a much better Miso Libre, is what it is. Um, Pillage, take control of an enemy artifact, or banish the bottom 5 cards of an enemy Boneyard.
Yeah,
There's
I
some
love this.
graveyard hate that you absolutely need.
Yeah, I love this because I've had this card for a while that I didn't dust because I was holding on to it, hoping that I could do something with it at some point. And taking control of an enemy artifact wasn't really viable. So now that I could do that or banish the bottom 5 cards of an enemy Boneyard makes it like, okay, well, now I can kind of justify putting this in.
I just love anything with ore in it because
Mm.
giving me extra decisions, I just love that. I love the complexity.
All right, let's cruise through. Rewind text got cost 1 more. I've always figured out that 2 removal for 1 cost is a little bit over the top. I think we're all right with this. Let's see. Give another minion -1/-0 and ephemeral as a 1-drop. I think this is it's all right. I mean, giving something ephemeral is a very important element these days, but
Yeah, this is going to go back into my experiment that I've been trying to do an all in ephemeral, like making my opponent's deck completely ephemeral. So this is something I'm going to be messing around with.
I think we're gonna see this card a lot just because it's gonna, make certain trades favorable. And on top of that, it's gonna be denying Journey of Souls with the ephemeral.
Yep, and it's cheap as hell too.
Yep.
Wake the Bones. This is something that was spoken to me by Christo was talking about how this card needed to create when it brought something back from the graveyard. Yeah, why was it not ephemeral? He's like, why is it not ephemeral when it comes back with Wake the Bones? It just does not seem right. And they made that adjustment. I think that this is a pretty hefty nerf, definitely a hefty nerf, but I think it's a necessary one. And I'm okay with the fact that this is a pretty big kick in the pants for this card. Doesn't make it unplayable by any means. It just really makes certain sequences and infinite freaking short stags gone now.
For sure.
Yeah, this is for you, Wholesome, I guess, right? Because you play a lot of Reanimator. This changes Reanimator. Not really, maybe your decision to put this card in, but it makes it a little bit difficult to have the endless continuous cycle of hags, right? Or necromantics. So it changes that a little bit.
For sure. But I think it was more abused with Bald Mountain and just bringing back Sapo or,
Oh, true.
Armageddon Angel.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Where are we
Orange.
gonna go? Yeah, resupply caravan. This one is something that people were clamoring for a while. Basically, resupply caravan's more or less the same scenario, minus the +2/+2 for the desert. And now, so it got a buff. It's a 3/3 now all the time. However, it's no longer +2/+2 on a desert. And in order to get the action of giving adjacent minions a standard action, they have to be occupying a desert. Now, there's lots of deserts in Orange. But does this make this card just, does this wipe this card off the face of the earth now?
No, I think you're still going to see it. It actually makes it a little easier because now I don't have to put it on top of a desert. I just have to make sure people next to him are on the desert.
I think it's pretty much gone, especially because this is a rare as opposed to Volition being a common.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't think
The
that we're
double
going to see
gem
this
cost. Yeah.
unless you're playing a desert themed deck where you can be reliably hitting a desert, on the having a few of your square lanes on the board being deserts. I don't think that you're going to be too happy about this. Then again, there's a lot of it's not just a vanilla desert that you need. It could be anything that has a desert tag to it. So, but I still don't think that this is necessarily the greatest thing in the world anymore. You might see it flash up here and there, but as an auto include in orange, I don't think you're going to see that much of that card anymore.
All right, lightning speed. Let's we're running out of time. Let's do a lightning speed.
All right, Deva of the Wastes. What do you feel about this one? Let's give it a good. Okay, let's just go good. Good change, bad change, no opinion.
No opinion.
Yeah, no opinion.
Yep, same. Never played it, never will. Desertification engine. What are your feelings on this? Good change, bad change, no opinion.
Great change.
I don't have an opinion on this one either because this is another card that I never played, so no opinion on that. Won't have an opinion on most orange.
I think this is an okay change, but again, I don't think it's by any means a card that you want to see or you want to play. Ghoul now double orange. Good change, bad change, no opinion.
Good change. Leave my
Agreed.
Boneyard alone.
Agreed. Good change for definitely for Wholesome and for all you necromantic players because this one was a real pain.
Yeah, this is definitely a necessary change. One quick note about this is the fact that if you're playing against Necromantic or you're playing against Reanimator, you want to get this out kind of at an opportune time to drop it and play and make it happen. But double orange is again, it's a subtle change. Notarized reality. I got no opinion on this one.
Confusing change. I don't know. It was giving +1/+0 if you did it to your own deck already. Now they just changed it to do +1/+1. I don't really see the big difference, but sounds
And
good.
it makes them zealots. So
That's
if you're playing
true.
zealot decks. That's pretty significant. I don't play them, so I don't care. But I think it's a good change for the card.
Yeah, a good change might matter in the future.
Parsa Divinity Cannon. It's no longer immobile, so it's got some legs now. Still not going to be played.
I think it's a good
Don't
change
play it.
though. I think it's a good change because you can move it around now, and it's a cheap card to throw down.
Hourglass, the quicksand hourglass. Um, Meh. I mean, not interested.
I don't wait. What's
Um,
the change? When enemy attacks the lane, I don't see what the
Again,
change was. What
there's
was
just
the?
so many changes that
Oh, you
again.
can't stack it anymore. Is that what the change was? It can't stack. That was the only change.
Yes, it used to be exactly. It used to be stacking.
Oh,
It's no longer
that's
stacking.
yeah, whatever. That's not really. I have no opinion
But
about that change.
it's no longer an awaken ability. It's an activated ability. Choose one of your lanes. It's got a whole bunch of stuff. Again, it's
Well,
not.
actually, that's actually better because in an artifact deck that's actually better because instead of committing to it right away in Fires of Creation, I could just make this so I get my Forgeling and then I could choose later which one it picks. So that's actually might be better.
Yeah, I just want to. I'm gonna actually just parse over a few of these. One that I want to note that I think might actually start seeing some play is the Shadowvar Beast. Shadowvar Beast now gives Fragile 1 to the 3 lanes across from it as well. It's a decent body, a 3/3, gives everyone across from it -1/-0, but now also Fragile 3. I think that this is a card that is going to see play in certain orange archetypes. I want your thoughts on this.
Oh, for sure. I'm already seeing it a bunch, and I've been testing it myself. In red orange with Iron Flesh Performer, you're going to be making some really nice trades.
This card was already a pain in the ass, so I don't really I don't like that it got a buff. So you're probably gonna be seeing this a lot more, unfortunately.
Yeah, buy a free.
Mind Freak in purple. So yeah, we're just gonna zip through some of these cards here. But Mind Freak in purple is a
Yes.
card I feel is going to be I don't want to say everywhere, but very, very, very prominent. And the
Yep.
reason being is that not just because it just increases something by 2 now, but it's a good one drop play, like a good, non-committal one card play that you can always play at any time safely. It's not like committing anything to a board to get obliterated. But you can now cost things out of reach that you might not otherwise be able to deal with. So, like Idric Beasts at 8 are now priced out of that range. They're now 11, so green might not be able to play it. All those expensive big boys that you might otherwise see on turn 7 now are turn 10 plays. Not to mention pairing up for a few of these in a row, they stack, so you can make
Yeah.
Yep.
something cost
This
6 more. And that card that is now in their hand that costs 12 or 13 is now unplayable. So I think that this is a card that is going to be it's an early burn if you want to play something, or it's just an easy play to sort of round out your mana curve.
is already a card I've been playing in my ephemeral experimentation decks, and like I like this change because people still don't understand that. For some reason, I always see people burn the card that I just made ephemeral, and I don't understand why. So I actually like this change because now I could make a card super unappealing that's already very expensive, make it even more unappealing, and force them to have to burn it because they need the mana.
Great
I,
point.
I really like this card.
Hmm.
I,
Same.
re- I really, really like this card. Anything that kind of just dicks with your opponent's hand, like
Oh,
it's
those are the
just
best.
so good.
Those are the best.
Because man, like because it messes with their plans, right? Like if you suspect there's gonna be a Sapo on turn 7, you just jam this on turn 6 and just say F your Sapo, like see him later kind of thing. Misfortune now only deals 1 instead of 2 damage upon with the demise effect. I think that's all right. Misfortune has gone through a few different iterations, and I think that this is perfectly fair. I didn't think Misfortune was a big issue, to be honest with you.
Neither did I.
Can we
But
mention
I
God of
support.
Gamers real quick? Because what the heck is the Homeward Crown?
Where's God of Gamers?
What's the Homeward Crown item? Have you guys ever seen that one?
I have
Well,
not.
I've
I
never
have
seen
not.
this card played either.
I've never seen this
Um,
card ever.
I have seen this card because I picked it up in a draft once, but I don't think it had any effect, so I couldn't even tell you what the Homeward Crown did. I know it's a good thing. I just don't know what the hell it is. But I think it's pretty insignificant. Again, who knows, man? Someone might come up and break it, but
I don't know.
um,
I
Master of
will.
Shadows, I just want to really touch upon real quick. I think Master of Shadows got a really cool buff because it's 1/1 stealth, immortal, deadly. Everyone you create gets stealth. Like,
Yeah,
come
the
on.
the immortal tag. Well, he already had that ability with everybody gets stealth. The immortal tag is what made this way stronger and crazier. I've been putting it into all my purples. It's a hard card to remove unless you have a spell that can just take it off the board. You can't move it. It's gonna stay there. And also blight will
Suppress
take care of
deals
it. But
with it.
it's suppressed or blight or something like that. But if you're playing against aggro decks, this card is like their death sentence right here.
Yeah, this card is kind of begging for a hard answer from your opponent, right? I mean, it dies to blight, it dies to a bunch of stuff. Let's just not uh let's not pussyfoot around that fact. It'll, suppression kills it and blight kills it, which is fine. However, you need to have those answers. So you're putting your opponent on that. Red won't have an answer for it because red won't be able to really suppress and red won't really be able to blight. So you're really hoping that it's either something like blue or yellow that can deal with it. This card, I feel, if it's played on curve, can absolutely terrorize just on its own. If you're standing in the way, if this card is standing in the way of other cards, suddenly everything you play with this card on the board is a mystery to your opponent, and it just jams up their thought process. Not to mention, if they don't have an instant answer to this, you just bounce this thing around and stand in the way of whatever the hell biggest nonsense that they have. So I think that this is a really cool, flavorful change to this card.
Agreed.
All right. I have a couple more I want to get to. Canine Cavalry. I think that this card is at one point going to be someone's going to figure this card out. Drop it. Adjacent minions +1/+1. Use power. Bounce it. I feel like this is just a card that late game you just play it, you bounce it, you buff your units, and you go. It's not a 2/2 body. It's just a recurring spell almost.
Yeah, it's still kind of expensive for its ability, but yeah, we'll see.
I have no opinion. I just have no opinion.
At the very least, it's a gnome petting a dog. So,
Yeah.
Fire
That's
Eater, we talked about this earlier, right? Fire Eater, we like the change. It kind of went back from being this is a hard card to tune apparently because it went back from being like unplayed to they made one minor choice and then it became the most powerful card in the game, and now they went back to what it was before. And now we're probably not going to see it because red players don't like to pay for things apparently.
Yeah, the red players want everything for free, I guess. But I think this change is great. It bounced back to what it used to be before they took away that cost of one. So I like this change.
All right.
Oh,
Fire's Daughter. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say. We already talked about Lord. Never mind. Go ahead.
Let's see. Yeah, so we talked about Lort. We liked Lort. We actually kind of let off a bit with Lort. And we're going to talk about Ire's Daughter. No longer is it just a one health restore across the board. It's just fully heal adjacent minions at the end of turn. I know that it's a bit of a buff, but I do not like this. I like it when I can have the heals across the board because sometimes just that putting your minion one above or like healing them by one is more important than healing the unit fully next to you. I like to sort of play this card on a full board versus next to something big. But that's just my own preference and play style. So I'm gonna run with that, but it's an interesting change, and it might actually make this unit a little bit more viable and more apparent. I don't know what you guys think on this one.
It's all right.
I have no opinion. Again, I
Yeah,
have
I
no
played a
opinion.
lot of this. I used to play a lot of this. And finally, we'll just say Plague Maidens. I mean, Plague Maidens are now cheaper, but they pretty much do the same thing. I'm waiting. You've seen Plague Maidens in the past, just kind of out there smashing face and doing their thing. It's a very cool deck that you have to build around, but Plague Maidens themselves are kind of, I don't know if this is just going to make them flavor of the month, flavor of the day, or all around stalwart of the meta. But Plague Maidens themselves kind of you bump into them now and then, and they don't exactly scare you that much.
I thought it was fine the way it was. This is another one that I'm like, I really don't know why it needed to be changed from a 4 to a 3, but whatever.
No, I think it's a good change. It's more comparable to Thunderclap now. So for a board clear.
That's true.
Sure, but it damages your own side too, so it's kind of more like, I don't know, misanthrope or something.
Yeah, the thing about this card is that a lot of people would just slam it on Rislan's Bite, which gave it armor 1, so that you can kind of just jam, like, you can use the its ability, just recklessly and slam out a full turn's worth of damage across it, and it also kills you too. Don't forget. So this is a card I really want to play around, and I really want to play test it and maybe win with. The problem is it's rare, so there's only 2 of them, so you have to find it first and then go from there. But the good news about it is that it's yellow green, meaning that it has the green ramp ability, and it has yellow for life. It has the yellow as well for protection, life gain, longevity.
Setting up wonder drugs with this is sweet.
Yeah, so it's the right color coordination to draw the cards, stay alive, and make this happen. So good combo piece. But then again, when you're talking about yellow green and mention the word combo, this is not the combo piece that you're thinking about. You're thinking more of volition and stuff like that. So that's why I think that this card, when you're building a deck that's yellow and green, eventually you get to a point where you're like, yeah, it's cool to be intriguing and exciting and different and creative, or I could just win and play volition. That's kind of like the thought process that happens.
For sure.
And that does it. I know we skipped a few towards the end there for time constraint concerns, but that was a little bit of our insight on these changes. And like we mentioned, we do think that overall it's been a very, very good patch from a UI perspective, from an arena revamp perspective, and from a balance perspective. And we're still in that spot right now where the meta is still gestating and making sure that the dust settles before we can make a proper assessment of was it a great patch or a good patch, or ultimately a bad patch, because you never know. Next week we might be talking about the fact that Lorts are out of control and they need to be stopped. So
no, never.
Yeah, I never. Not for me.
Not for me.
But I want to thank you again, Wholesome, for offering some of your insights on these changes and all that. It's been significantly fun to chat with you. I mean, not just here on the show, but just in general. You're a good dude, and more people need to find you. So how can they find you?
At Wholesome GMNG on Twitter, and same thing on Twitch. And I do have a YouTube now, actually.
Ooh.
So yeah, there too.
Plug that bad boy as well. Go check out our good boy Wholesome again on Twitter, Twitch, and on YouTube, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, Markthius, again, thanks again for making this a beautifully polished, almost as polished as the UI.
Almost.
Almost. We have a million things to do, right? So
that's right. Hey, we're getting close to our close of our first season of this whole show, right? I mean, we're going to be taking a little break towards the end of December for the holidays, and then coming back in January with more action. So it's exciting, man. We've gone through 12 of these now, so it's an exciting time to be alive.
Yeah, we're probably going to maybe do like a 15-episode season, let's say.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to pull the plug and go ahead and remind our families that we still are alive. So
yeah, they exist.
So thank you again, Mark, for doing everything. And again, you can follow us, everybody here on the podcast. Myself, Flake, twitch.tv/WatchFlake, and on Twitter @WatchFlake, and our good boy Markthius, the wonderful producer of this show and co-host. He's at twitch.tv/Markthius and @Markthius on Twitter. And it's worth noting, friends, again, that the Winter Wonder Brawl is around the corner. 98.3 Media Events are going to be making that one happen. So free entry again to this tournament. And
a real brouhaha.
It's going to be a brouhaha. It started off just as a brouhaha.
That's
but
a
we
ha-ha.
doubled up on the ha. So
yeah, double the ha.
100% more ha for this one. But you want to get into it. If you like the Moonlight Masquerade, if you like Gem Wars, it's all the same there. Again, cash prizes to be won, so sign up for that bad boy. Again, for me, myself here, and for Marcus, thank you so much for listening to the Boneyard podcast, and we will see you soon, my friends, and adios.